this young lady vanished into thin air. So that was the intriguing part. That was the piece of the puzzle that you had to solve first.
Tonight on a 2-hour 2020, The Hunch. A beautiful blonde. She checks into a hotel, but nobody sees her check out. So how does she end up here, beaten and left for dead?
Very, very cold and dark. I couldn't stand up. I was in shock.
A cigar-smoking, hog-riding private eye, fixated on finding her attacker.
You take whatever clue you have. It might take you to a dead end, might take you to a blind alley, but it might take you to the promised land.
A single frame of surveillance tape that nobody else saw.
This was the defining moment in the whole case right here.
This is a pretty bizarre theory.
Just one big problem. She has no memory of what took place.
She has no clue what the heck happened to her.
I saw dreams. I saw nightmares.
So how can he be sure his hunch is the right one?
I go, you gotta be kidding me.
Here's Deborah Roberts.
Tonight, a story of sex, lies, and videotape, and an almost deadly twist on that expression, now you see her, now you don't. As you're checking into hotels on vacation this summer, consider this. What do those surveillance cameras really capture? Because tonight, it's going to take a modern-day Sherlock Holmes with a wild hunch, a Harley, and a black leather jacket to crack the mystery of the vanishing blonde. It's a quiet, lonely place, a speck of grassy land around an undeveloped cul-de-sac on the outskirts of Miami. There's a no dumping sign in plain view. But on the morning of February 21st, 2005, a utility worker passing by notices that someone has ignored it in a big way. Curled up in the grass, a woman, naked, unconscious, and beaten within an inch of her life.
The woman was airlifted to Jackson Memorial Hospital's Ryder Trauma Center in critical condition.
Pretty much somebody dumped her out there.
To die?
Yes.
So it was pretty amazing that she was found alive.
Absolutely.
Miami-Dade Detective Alan Foote caught the case of the mystery woman with no ID.
Boy, I've got a Jane Doe on my hands. She was beat up and cut up. She had cuts on her face. She has swollen jaws, bruises on her body.
And unconscious.
And unconscious.
At the crime scene, one potential clue, a blue blanket. Police have it tested for trace evidence. It turns up nothing. They also canvass houses nearby.
Try to see if anybody noticed anything, and of course, we got no response there.
I didn't see anything or heard anything.
As the news spreads...
There's no clothing, there's no license or anything that would distinguish who she is.
The mystery deepens. The victim remains unconscious until the following day. Then the darkness recedes.
I woke up. I had a lot of pain. I remember somebody asked me what was my name.
And what did you learn about her once she came to?
She was able to write some information down on a piece of paper.
The petite mystery woman still can't speak, but she scrawled out some basic information. Her name is Inna Budnitska. She's from Ukraine, and she works for one of the many cruise lines that operate in Miami.
I wanted to have an occupation in my life. I want to be someone.
That all makes sense. But what about this? Her attorney's name?
Yes, her attorney's name.
Did that strike you as a little strange?
Yes, it did. I did not know whether she was involved in something civil or something criminal. But for someone to ask for an attorney as a victim right off the bat does throw a red flag.
Maybe they thought it was unusual that someone would ask for an attorney, but this woman had a horrific assault and probably was reaching for anything that she could.
Here's her story. Inna has been injured on the ship and has filed suit against the cruise line. That's why she had an attorney.
Yes, I didn't know nobody. I was alone up here. So the only one person who I knew, that was my attorney. That was my lawyer.
While she's convalescing from her injury, Inna's being housed by the cruise line at this hotel, the Airport Regency, about 10 miles east of the vacant lot where she was found. The hotel would prove crucial to the mystery, especially its sophisticated security system.
We have 16 cameras covering the whole perimeter of the hotel, including parking lot, the entrance, the exits, the lobby, the restaurant, the lobby bar, the front desk, the back exits, Those cameras have a motion sensor detector, and then we have 2 security guards at night and on duty, so we can see, you know, anybody or anything that happens in the perimeter of the hotel.
For privacy reasons, the hotel does not have cameras in the elevators or the upstairs hallways. That would make a big difference later. But for now, Detective Foote has this pile of DVDs from the first-floor cameras to comb through. He begins scanning those recordings for any evidence of the crime.
Now, where's the guard shack? Up here?
It's here, on this side.
Back at the hospital, Ina is eventually able to fill in some blanks about her whereabouts on the evening of the attack. She says she'd gone out with a friend that night to a restaurant in Coconut Grove.
I had fun. We stayed there a while, had some drinks.
She remembers returning by taxi alone shortly after midnight. But get this, the security cameras catch her leaving again at 3:33 a.m. That's her in the red jacket. 7 minutes later, she's back at 3:40.
Did that strike you as odd that she's going and coming in the middle of the night?
I mean, she could explain that.
Ina recalls going to the gas station across the street to buy a phone card to call her mom back in Ukraine, which is 7 hours ahead.
I'm very close with my mother, and I used to call her very often back in Ukraine.
But here's where the case really turns into a mystery which could stump Sherlock Holmes. After returning from her errand, Ina walks to the lobby elevators at 3:41 a.m. and is never seen by hotel cameras again.
It's the last we see of her. So that's how we believe she was attacked in the hotel.
The next thing Ina remembers is regaining consciousness for a brief moment in that vacant lot where she was found at 8:30 that morning.
It was very cold. If I remember, it was like very, very cold and dark and cold. I couldn't stand up and I could not walk.
But everything that happened in between the elevator and the cul-de-sac is a total blank.
The memory was not clear because I was in pain, in too much pain. My head was not working, absolutely. I was in shock.
The biggest mystery, of course, is how did she get out of the hotel? Do you come up with any theories?
I was looking for anything.
Police are confounded. They even inspect the landscaping below Ina's 4th-story room on the off chance she might have been lowered or dropped from there.
I'm looking in her room over the balcony. I'm looking in the bushes to see if a body was thrown over and there was a body imprint, or if maybe she was lowered by rope.
That was kind of a long shot.
Long shot.
A long shot that didn't pay off. No evidence of Ina being lowered from the window. This case is a bona fide whodunit. New questions and suspects popping up faster than any answers. Is the victim really a victim? Or was she somehow involved? And could someone from her personal life or the hotel staff be the missing key to this case?
Did you accept that story?
No, no. So with that, he became my suspect.
Stay with us.
2020 continues. Here again, Deborah Roberts.
It's a haunting mystery. Who attacked a young woman and left her for dead in this vacant cul-de-sac? Detective Alan Foote's search for clues has become an exercise in frustration.
So where did you turn next?
I start following other leads, suspects in the case.
There's no shortage of early suspects. For starters, that friend who was out with Ina the night she was attacked. He's 52-year-old Peter Demolius, a Greek national, and like Ina, a cruise line employee.
They asked me what happened with Ina.
Peter confirms Ina's account. A dinner, some drinking in Coconut Grove, then a friendly parting of ways around midnight when Ina takes a cab back to the hotel. He cooperates fully with police.
Why I have to worry? I don't worry. I know I am not on the crime.
But Detective Foote uncovers this troubling fact. Demolius has been arrested just months before after he and Ina had a dispute at a local nightclub.
Peter felt that there were some unsavory characters there and wanted her to leave. So she did not want to leave, and he kind of grabbed her by the arm, and they got into a little argument, and an officer working security arrested him for domestic violence.
Did that make him a suspect in your mind?
partially.
Then there's this guy, the hotel night manager, George Perez.
The very first time I met George Perez was, he looked at me and said, "Oh my God, I hate cops."
Pretty blunt, pretty honest.
Oh yeah, I'm used to it.
Was I nervous? Absolutely, I would have every right to be.
Along with that instant hostility, Perez attracts police attention because he's seen with Ina in the lobby after she returns from her night out with Peter. You can see the sleeve of her red jacket on the front desk security camera here.
At some point in time, I do see Ina coming and going from the hotel. I see her talking to the desk clerk.
Then at 2:16 a.m., an odd encounter.
He left the front desk unattended and went into the elevator with the victim and was gone for approximately 15 minutes and then came back down alone.
Perez initially says he helped Ina to her room because she'd had too much to drink.
So I escorted her, made sure she got into the room safely, came back down to my post.
Did she look intoxicated on the tape to you?
No, no. So with that, he became my second suspect.
In fact, Perez would later admit that he'd been socializing with Ina.
I was friends with her in the workplace. I also had a friendship with her outside of the workplace. I thought very highly of her.
Given that Perez had a master key to all the rooms, the lead is promising. By now, one solid piece of evidence has emerged. DNA from the attacker was recovered from Ina's body because she wasn't just beaten, she was also raped. Samples are obtained from both suspects.
Which I voluntarily agreed to without a problem.
Also, I don't afraid about that.
Now possibly an even bigger break. Ina herself says she's begun to piece together memories of the attack, filling in the big blank between the elevator and the cul-de-sac, but only in fragments.
What was she able to tell you about what had happened?
Bits and pieces.
I saw dreams, I saw nightmares. For me, it was very difficult to realize what was the reality, what was not the reality.
No, she had a picture of the guys who had assaulted her.
There were two white gentlemen. I don't think she could give me an age. They were either Hispanic or European accents.
I remember, I guess, at least two other people. I don't remember the faces. I remember like a noise, and I remember a person like standing over you, putting like a pillow or something. And then it's dark, you know, it's just like a feeling that you cannot breathe.
Ina even undergoes hypnosis to clarify her memories. She recalls being carried down a back staircase out into a car, driving somewhere, and being raped in the back seat.
I remember, like, somebody hits you all the time. I remember a laugh. Somebody was laughing at this point.
But for every promising leads, there are twice as many disorienting puzzles. For one thing, Ina's certain she was attacked in her room, but that certainty just adds to Detective Foot's headaches.
I found it as a typical room, undisturbed.
No sign of a fight or assault?
No, beds unmade. There were, you know, I found beer bottles. I found clothes hanging in the bathroom, but nothing to indicate that there had been any kind of a struggle.
As for Ina's memory of being dragged down the back stairs, out an exit, and into a car, no dice. The exit door is covered by this security camera, which didn't capture anything like that.
The camera's working properly, so we reached a dead end on that point. It just didn't fit.
Detective Foot suspects there's more to Ina's story than she's able or willing to tell. Aside from her hazy recollection, there's a big, lingering question about her movements that night. Like many hotels, the Airport Regency has a key card security system, which logs each time a guest swipes their key to enter a room. Now, here's the riddle. The security cameras clock Ina entering the elevator for the final time at 3:41 a.m. But the log of key swipes at her door shows her entering at 3:58. So where was she then, and what exactly could she have been doing? Those missing 17 minutes lead police to pursue another theory. Could Ina be a prostitute? Maybe in that time she's gone to meet a John in his room. Perhaps that encounter led to the attack.
They didn't told me exactly. are you prostitute? All right? But the questions were like, you know, if I ever had a sex for money, and if this kind of question, it was emotionally difficult, very, very, very difficult.
Police pursue that theory, but as the investigation proceeds,
I'm picking up absolutely zilch, nothing to indicate that she was a prostitute.
So that left you kind of at a dead end at that point.
Right.
For months, the case would remain a puzzle, scattered in pieces. And to finally solve it, police would turn to an unlikely source with an even more unlikely theory.
I could feel it. I knew this was the guy.
Stay with us.
We return to 2020 and The Hunch.
If you've ever met private investigator Ken Brennan, no doubt you remember him.
I don't know, I'd like to say Ken Brennan's just an honest, straightforward guy, kind of easy to read. What you see is what you get.
When he's not riding motorcycles or pumping iron, he spends his time doing what he really enjoys, solving crimes.
What is it about this kind of work that attracts you?
He doesn't like catching bad guys, you know. That's quite rewarding in itself, and something I've always, you know, enjoyed doing, even when I was a youngster.
After decades in law enforcement, first as a police officer on Long Island, New York, then as a DEA agent in Florida,
I've been working in law enforcement since 1975.
Brennan now works as a private investigator.
Is it true that you've never taken a sick day?
No, I really haven't. When you enjoy what you're doing, it never seems like a job then.
It seems Brennan has a particular devotion to solving sex crimes. To this day, he still carries around the arrest file for the first sexual predator he ever interrogated.
They're the worst crimes, I feel, of all of them. And there's too many of them out there that aren't solved.
By November 2005, nearly 9 months after Ina Budnitska had been attacked, the case of the airport Regency rapist was on a slow boat to the cold case file.
Were you thinking at any point that this case is just unsolvable?
I don't like to think that, and I really didn't think that. I always kept hope that something would eventually solve the case. I don't like to give up.
In the aftermath of her attack, Ina has filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the hotel.
We felt they could have had better security. They weren't monitoring the security cameras correctly. They let an assailant onto the grounds of the hotel.
Where were the security? Why and how somebody would get into your room without the key? How?
The hotel denies any wrongdoing and needs an investigator to disprove the woman's claims. That's where Ken Brennan comes in.
We have to clear the responsibility of the hotel. What happened in our hotel, it can happen in the best hotel in the world.
The biggest glaring thing is that nobody really knew how it occurred. Everybody loves a good mystery, you know, and everybody wants to be the ability to solve something that somebody wasn't able to do before. So, of course, that would be rewarding.
Like many city detectives, Alan Foote isn't wild about private eyes.
What did you think of Ken Brennan when you first laid eyes on him?
This guy's going to drive me nuts.
But Brennan isn't your typical hired gun, and Foote has a hunch he's somehow different. Maybe it's his experience, maybe his straight talk.
Most police officers don't like PIs.
How'd you get him to accept and to trust you?
They said, hey, listen, Alan, I'm not going to mess up your case. You know, I'm not going to screw it up. If we're going to solve this thing, we're going to be a team. We're going to work it together.
You don't like PIs, but yet you trusted him. Why?
There was just something about him that was honest. I really felt that he was going to do what he said.
One of the first things Foote shares is the DNA results that have come back on his first two suspects, Ina's friend, Peter Demolius, and night manager, George Perez, both negative.
I was cleared of any charges because apparently, I had nothing to do with it.
So those two are eliminated. But Brennan shares the detective's suspicions about Ina herself. So he goes back to that cul-de-sac and interviews the neighbors.
Remember about that? They were exactly where they across the street.
He combs through Ina's background, even puts her under surveillance.
There was nothing indicative of her being a prostitute.
So you ruled that out?
So I ruled that out pretty readily in the very beginning of the investigation.
I knew who I was. I know who I am.
Still, there's that strange 17-minute gap between the security camera at the elevator and the key card swipe at Ina's door. Where'd she been?
I said, well, listen, did anybody bother to take the time to find out if the time stamp on the security cameras, if that matched the time stamp on the card access system, which nobody ever did. And it turns out when we did do that, there was a 17-minute lapse.
So that mystery is solved.
So that mystery was solved.
Now, Brennan has another hunch that the entire incident could have been an elaborate scheme to shake down the hotel.
I thought that in this particular case that it might have been a possibility that she could have been involved in some kind of a scam, that the whole purpose was to try to obtain money from either the insurance company or from the hotel itself. It happens all over the world.
Because she was filing a lawsuit against the hotel, a big lawsuit.
Exactly, and she didn't make a very good witness because she flip-flopped on a lot of the statements that she had given to police.
It just made me to laugh. I mean, I don't know from where did they take this and who came up with this idea.
The only thing Brennan has resembling a witness statement is Ina's muddled memory about being attacked in her room by a number of men. So he takes a novel approach to that evidence. He throws it out.
The last thing that I put faith in is a victim statement, because when something traumatic happens to them, their memory becomes distorted. The thing you have to base your decisions on and where you head in an investigation is based on the evidence. What evidence do you have at that particular time?
That means one thing.
I believe that no matter what happened, it was going to be in the videotape.
How much footage were you going to have to comb through? Because there were a lot of cameras in the hotel, right?
Hours upon hours upon hours upon hours. It was extensive. That's something that you have to go through almost frame by frame.
Frame by frame?
It was countless amount of hours.
Now, every guest is a potential suspect. Hundreds of them, as well as every desk assistant, bellman, and janitor.
You had to watch each and every frame on every video because we were originally looking for possibly an employee that might have moved one of the cameras out of the location it was originally at and maybe possibly snuck the victim past that way.
Slowly but surely, Brennan eliminates every suspect. Everybody but one.
She goes out on the video, she goes out of the hotel early in the morning. When she returns, there's a big, large black man standing with her, and she just has a quick conversation with him, and they get onto the elevator together. I'm trying to look to see, do they look like they know each other? Because again, I'm thinking this could still possibly be a scam or something like that, you know? And after you keep reviewing it, it doesn't look like they have any kind of familiarity. He's just offering her to walk in front. She's not acknowledging him like she knows him.
Brennan's now rejected his own conspiracy theory.
It didn't appear to be staged at all.
But his focus on this man seems like just as much of a stretch. Later
on during the video, he's seen exiting the elevator. So we follow him to another camera and he goes off the property. While I'm watching the video of this person, this large person, black person coming off the elevator, and I went through this frame at a time.
And now, in extreme slow motion, Ken Brennan is about to crack the case.
This was the defining moment in the whole case, right here.
Don't go anywhere.
So what do you think Ken Brennan has spotted on that surveillance footage? Any guesses? We're live tweeting tonight, so let us know using the hashtag ABC2020. We'll be right back.
2020 continues. Here again, Deborah Roberts.
This young lady vanished into thin air. You know, that was the intriguing part. That was the piece of the puzzle that you had to solve first.
Private investigator Ken Brennan believes a big piece of that puzzle lies with this big guy. He's seen entering the elevator with Ina at 3:41 a.m., then exiting the hotel with a suitcase at 5:28.
About an hour later, he comes back and he re-enters the hotel, but he doesn't have the suitcase with him. That suitcase that he brought out earlier comes back a little over an hour later without the suitcase.
Huh. Does that register something right away in your mind?
As soon as he comes back without the suitcase, now he becomes a person of interest to me. He was the only one that had the time and the opportunity to commit the crime and come back to the scene.
Now, upon closer and repeated inspection, Brennan returns to this crucial moment when the man exits the elevator and gives the suitcase a telltale tug.
The suspect has to reach back and grab the handles with both hands to pull that suitcase out of the crack. I do a lot of traveling, you do a lot of traveling. I'm sure you have a lot of your clothing items in it. Was it ever so heavy you needed two hands to pull it out of the crack? No, probably not. As soon as he made the tug, as soon as he tugged out with both hands, it was like a light bulb went off in my head, and I said, this is my guy, this is my guy, because she's in that suitcase.
But that light bulb was only over Brennan's head.
You know, where's this guy coming out of left field with this black male suspect?
Nobody believes a grown woman could fit into a little suitcase.
But this is a small suitcase. What would lead you to even think a woman could fit into a small suitcase?
Well, the reason why I thought a woman might be able to fit in the suitcase is because this is a large guy. So our frame of reference on how large a suitcase is might be a little off. So I decided to use a measurement of the suitcase in relationship with markings on the elevator itself.
With that reference point, incredibly, Brennan's able to determine the bag is actually 29 inches high. And examining this image, where we see the suitcase against this floor runner, he concludes the bag is 19 inches wide, just like this one.
Then I knew exactly how wide the suitcase was.
And then you were able to really theorize that someone could fit in there.
That's correct. What I did was I had one of the fellows that worked for me had a girlfriend who was that size. So we got a hold of a suitcase that was the same dimensions and see if she could fit in it. And
well, she did.
He goes, yeah, it can. She fits fine.
If you think that sounds a bit bizarre, we thought so too. So we went to a local gymnastics school and asked these two instructors to help us. This woman stands 5'3", just like Ina, and sure enough, she fits comfortably inside the suitcase and gets zipped in by her friend. She'll be okay. Then she gets wheeled around the gym, emerging no worse for wear.
So I knew that she would fit. All I was doing is basically validating what my hunch was.
Brennan has now deduced the one theory of the case which matches all the evidence. This man attacked Ina sometime after they entered the elevator together. He dragged her body out of the hotel in this suitcase, drove off with her, dumped her body at that vacant lot, then returned.
All the puzzles started fitting together at that particular point, and I knew I had my guy. Then I just had to find out who the heck he was.
But it's still too early for high fives. Isolating the perpetrator on video is one thing, catching him another. And for Ken Brennan, that job is quickly becoming an obsession.
I said, hell or high water, I know I'm right. I could feel it. I knew this was the guy, and I was gonna catch this guy.
See what's next.
We return to 2020 and The Hunch.
When Ken Brennan first floated his theory of the crime, that the woman had been attacked by this large man and dragged out of the airport Regency in his suitcase, Detective Alan Foote thought it was a bad joke.
Are you thinking that maybe he's a little out there?
Sometimes we're all out there, but it's a lead. It's not on my priority because I'm not looking for blackmail. I'm putting this lead off to the side while I pursue the leads that I have.
Even Brennan's employers were skeptical.
This is a pretty bizarre theory. How does this go over with the hotel?
Well, it didn't really go over with the hotel too much either. In fact, one of the owners said, what the hell kind of an investigator are you? He goes, you're telling me it's this big black guy. Everybody else says it's, and she says it's two white Hispanic, you know, where's this coming from? You know, what kind of investigator are you? And they all started laughing inside the room. And that's what really pissed me off. And I said, hell or high water, I'm going to find out. I'm going to prove to these people that I'm right. I know I'm right. I could feel it. I knew this was the guy. And I was going to catch this guy.
There's some debate among Brennan's clients, the Airport Regency Hotel and its insurer, about whether to continue the investigation and find the attacker or just settle the lawsuit with Ina and walk away. But the hotel's vice president, Jose Vasquez, keeps Brennan in the game.
There was no way that we quit in that moment. We wanted to go up to the end.
So it was because of his little bit of arm twisting that we're able to carry on with the investigation.
So now you're focused on this big, tall, black guy with a bag that you've seen on camera. The case is pretty cold at this point. He's long gone. How do you even begin to try to find this guy?
You know, I don't know if he was somebody that was staying at the hotel, that was a visitor that was just visiting, you know, one of the other people from the hotel. If this guy just walked off the street, you know, we didn't know. So that was the next part of the investigation.
The hotel photocopies the IDs of registered guests, but as you can see, the facial images are unrecognizable and thus useless.
So you go back to the tape.
So I go back to the tape.
And what do you find?
I was looking to see if he had any interaction with any of the other people at the hotel. And he does. He ends up interacting with another black fellow.
And take a look at this. The second man is often seen wearing a lanyard around his neck with what looks like a name tag.
I'm trying to find out why he's wearing this name tag.
The problem? It's impossible to make out the name with the naked eye. So Brennan calls up the people who own the most powerful telescopes in the world, NASA.
I say, listen, you know, I know you guys look at, you know, digital photography from, you know, light years away. You know, maybe you could help me out on this case that I'm working.
But for this mission, not even NASA had the right stuff.
So they couldn't do it?
No, so they informed me, listen, you know, we tried, but we're not able to get that for you. So I said, okay, fine, you know, let's go back to the tape.
Fortunately, the next clue is spelled out in bold letters.
Later on in the video, when he's out by the hallway, you can clearly see that this says Mercury. But I just didn't.
What's Mercury?
That was the problem. I didn't know.
Mercury. Is it the car, the planet, the element? There's no way to tell until in another critical frame of video, Brennan notices another word written on the back of that same shirt.
You can clearly make out a V and an O, but it was difficult to see what was in the middle. And for whatever reason, I don't know. I think that says Verado. What the hell's a Verado? I said, I don't know, but let's find out. So then I went online and did a search. And I got a hit, and it showed that Mercury Marine made a brand new outboard engine by the name of Verado. Right, because after I saw that and I realized that was a boat engine, I said, these guys are working at the boat show.
In fact, the Miami Boat Show was held the same week of the crime, and as usual, Mercury was the major exhibitor. For a second, Brennan feels he's on the verge of closing the case, assuming the suspects worked with the guy in the T-shirt, and they both work for Mercury. It's just a matter of getting someone there to identify him.
Mercury Marine is actually, the parent company is a company by the name of Brunswick. I end up contacting Brunswick, speaking to the head of security. And I said, listen, do you have any employees that stayed at the Airport Regency Hotel? And he said, no, we didn't.
So it's a dead end.
So it's a little bit of a setback.
So now he's got to find yet another needle in what's becoming a long row of haystacks.
So I said, well, trust me, one of the guys there was walking around with one of those Mercury Verado shirts. Somebody was giving them out. So he goes, okay, let me get back to you. So I said, okay, fine. A couple of days later, he calls me back. He says, as far as we can tell, the only people that received any of the shirts, the Verado shirts, were employees that worked at the food court.
So another connection.
So there's another connection. I said, well, let's find out who's the caterer for the Miami Boat Show. So it ends up becoming a company called Centerplate.
Another lead, another headache. Centerplate tells Brennan it runs concessions at events all across the country and brings in people from all over. It reimburses workers for housing but doesn't keep track of where they stay. The company's cooperative but just can't say if any of its people slept at the Airport Regency. For Brennan, another possible dead end.
I've come a long way, and I said, I'm not going to give up on this guy yet. I said, listen, he's really distinctive. The guy's about 6'4". He's a black fella, and he wears glasses, you know, big, thick glasses. So I said, does anybody remember working with a guy that matches that description? Sure enough, about a week or so later, I called him again, said, you know, gotten anywhere? He says, listen, he says, nobody knows the guy's name, but one of the people that remembered seeing this fella working there remembers something about him being hired out of Louisiana. He believes that's where he's from.
So now you've gone from Miami to Louisiana.
So now I'm over in Louisiana.
Brennan's manhunt takes a big turn into the Big Easy.
There was no doubt in my mind that if he was on your trail, he was going to catch you.
See what's next.
2020 continues with The Hunch.
Mardi Gras in New Orleans. It's the year's biggest party.
I think the thing you miss the most when I retire is Mardi Gras.
It was here in 2000 that Police Captain Ernest Dimma found himself arresting a rowdy college kid in the heart of the French Quarter. Things didn't go smoothly.
In the course of the arrest, a young college kid was able to get out of my grasp and start running down Wall Street.
Then, just as his suspect is about to escape into a sea of hardcore revelers,
out of nowhere, from the crowd comes this dark, imposing figure.
That dark, imposing figure? Guess who?
I had taken my kids to Mardi Gras, and there was an incident where this police captain had arrested somebody, and the guy broke away from him and started running through the crowd. And I witnessed it, and I ran the guy down.
He chases the kid down, halfway down the block. He tackles him in the middle of the street. By the time we get there, he's fully under control.
That night, the two law officers form a fast bond.
I gave him the nickname Batman just because how the incident unfolded.
Yeah, he called me Batman because I had a black turtleneck.
And you swooped in.
Black jeans on, so when I went and grabbed the guy, he said I looked like Batman coming through the crowd. So
I swore to him that anything he ever needed from me, I was there for him.
That time is now. Brennan calls Dimma and tells him about his case. The suspect with the suitcase, the guy with the Mercury Verado t-shirt, the boat show, and the tip that the company running the food court Center Plate had employed a man from Louisiana who fit the suspect's description.
Sherlock Holmes would be impressed.
I don't know about Sherlock Holmes, but I thought I was on a roll, so we figured we might as well keep going. I was certain that I was right. And that's one thing about me, once I'm certain about something, in hell or high water, I'm going to prove my case.
It's time for another Brennan-esque shot in the dark. Figuring his suspect works in food services year-round, he starts investigating the bigger concession venues around New Orleans. Places like Zephyr Field, the local minor league baseball stadium, and of course, the Superdome. But finding folks in New Orleans is no simple task. Between the time of the 2005 Miami Boat Show and Brennan's investigation, New Orleans had endured tragic and tough times.
Tonight, the overwhelming, catastrophic damage from Hurricane Katrina.
Officials estimate that 80% of New Orleans is now underwater.
Went through New Orleans. He was no longer there. I didn't even know if he was going to be alive or not anymore.
Batman Brennan explains his situation to Captain Dimma, and he asked Dimma's help finding any information on his suspect.
It wouldn't be in a computer because we really didn't have any information on him per se that I know of.
Dimma's people put out feelers, and soon all the gambles and all the guesses start paying off. The New Orleans police confirmed that Brennan's mystery man was working at the Superdome right when Katrina hit.
We were able to put the name with the body and come up with a hard description on the person that he was looking for.
One of Dimma's men breaks the news.
Calls me up and says, listen, I got good news and I got bad news. And I said, all right, well, give me the good news. He says, the good news is I think I know who he is.
After months of trying to put a name to the video image, it's so close Brennan can taste it. And incredibly, when he finally hears it, he can't believe his ears.
I go, you gotta be kidding me.
Stay with us.